Hi, everybody, and welcome to the DogCo Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Klein, and I have a really special episode today. I have been so excited to bring on my friend, my colleague, my mentor, which we're going to get into for a former story of how Robert and I first got connected, Robert Strickland. Robert is the resident AI automations and tech guru in our industry. He is always on the forefront of new technology, new things you can do to streamline your business and make it work more efficiently for you. Robert, thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. You know I love you to death, so this is great. Thanks for having me on.
It's so mutual. I know you and I are both familiar with this story because we were both there when it happened, but I'd love to set the stage because you told this story at the summit, but for anyone listening that wasn't there, of how you and I met, which was Robert was this like voice of wisdom in all the Facebook groups, which everyone knows. You are known for that. You come in, drop like a prolific moment of wisdom, and then just like mic drop. It's like your signature move. I had watched you in the groups for a while, and I had a 2-year-old business, and I wanted to do this huge change and go from full service pet care to dog walking only. And I hadn't seen any other companies really doing this that I could emulate after. So it got me wondering, would it be possible even? Am I missing something? And I cold DM'd Robert, who had never talked to me, and just said, will you get on a phone call with me? And for whatever reason, you said yes. I pitched you my idea. And to me, you were super encouraging, super supportive. How was that conversation on your side?
So I thought maybe you were a little bonkers. And it's not because of you, but it's just because my world at the time was almost exclusively pet sitting. And I always wanted to get to the point where most of the business I had coming in was dog walking, right? But I could never quite figure out how to make that transition. And so when you started to chat with me, I appreciated you calling me because little did you know that I was trying to make that same transition myself, right? And so somehow the universe just brought us together. And it's just been such a pleasure to watch you, go from that burnt out entrepreneur to being able to scale your business, to sell the business. And now you're sharing your wisdom with other people. And so it's just been such a pleasure to watch you do that. But yeah, I thought I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I wanted to support you. No matter how I felt about it, I wanted to support you.
And you did. I think it's so fun to share now with the relationship we do have 7 years later. It's just so fun and funny to me that was the precipice of where it started versus where it is now. So thanks for going down that journey with me.
Yeah, of course.
I'd love for us to start with hitting the highlights of your journey, and how we got to this conversation here. I know it's a really big question, but wherever you would like to start with that.
Well, my story really starts in a place that really had nothing to do, with litter boxes and dog hair. I was working a corporate job, and I was doing process and tech work, and my job was to look at really messy systems and figure out where things were breaking. And then I learned to use software to help me clean up workflows and to automate parts of our business. And while I was doing that, I just decided to start walking dogs and pet sitting as a side hustle. And it was just supposed to be something small to make a little bit of extra money. But man, did it grow. It grew. People started telling their friends, and suddenly I was not just the guy who walks dogs, right? It turned into a business that was operating in 2 states. Over the last 18 years, I have done it all. in terms of my business. I was that solo sitter, and this is where you were when you reached out to me, right? And I had that big key ring. I was racing around town all day long. I was just a very, very tired business owner who was handling everything, the hiring,
Mm,
the payroll, emergencies. It was all on me. And I just hit a wall one day, and the business was busy, but I was exhausted. And my corporate brain said to me one day, it said, "You know what? You know how to fix this because this is what you do in your corporate world. So why not treat your side hustle as a real business and clean up those messy systems?" And so I just really started bringing together my knowledge of technology and processes, and I brought that into my own pet care business. And then I really just started tightening up how I brought on new clients and how we actually performed the services and the hiring. And man, life got so much calmer when I was
mm,
able to implement what I learned in my corporate job, which, by the way, was a very stressful job. But
mhm,
suddenly I was able to take what I learned and let that flow into my own pet care business. And when I did that, man, did my life change. And eventually other businesses were looking at me, and they're like, "We like what you're doing. I'd like to see you implementing these processes." So now I'm kind of like in my third iteration of Robert, and I've done corporate America. I've done the pet care business, still operating that, but now I get to help other businesses. And that's why I'm just so excited to be part of DogCo. I'm just so thrilled because I look around me and everybody else is burnout too.
hmm,
And I know that I can help with that. And it
mhm.
just gives me a lot of joy to be able to help people come to the realization that it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it out to be.
If you feel stuck in your pet care business, this one is for you. I've worked with over 200 companies in the pet care industry, and this is what I can tell you. If you feel stuck in your business, if you are struggling with burnout, if your net profit is too low, if you're not growing your top line revenue, those changes will not happen by accident. My name is Michelle Klein. I am a coach consultant in the pet care space, and I help team-based companies grow and scale. We have just opened up our doors for enrollment, and we are only taking companies once a year. So if you want to work with DogCo, if you have that on your radar, January 2026 is your chance, and you need to schedule a consultation now. Go to dogcolaunch.com/mastermind to learn more. I love that, Robert. There's so many different threads that I feel like I could
Yeah.
pull out of that. I mean, starting with, I didn't realize that was your background and experience before your pet care business. That kind of through line of your experience makes so much sense. It feels so natural from phase to phase. From know it, I obviously didn't know you in the first iteration of Robert, but from knowing you and seeing you transition from the second to the third, where, you're still a pet care business owner, but also have evolved into like a true leader in our industry and someone that's like guiding all of these companies on this path, that feels like such a natural extension of the work that you've done. Though I'm sure in the moment you had to fight really hard for those initial systems. I love that you now get to take all of that experience that is so grounded in the work that people do every day to see that through to this next phase in our industry.
Yes, yes. And you're right. It is a natural trajectory, and it's why I am so passionate about what I do. I have seen the possibilities in a much larger organization, and I know what AI and automations can do. And I saw it transform my own little business. And you know what? Had I not implemented these processes into my own pet care business, I would not have the time to even be
Hmm.
having this conversation with you right now. We talk a lot about return on investment. And for me, it's all about time because now I get to do stuff that I like, right? That I enjoy doing. And it's not just a daily grind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's such a natural path forward. And again, I'm just so thrilled to be here with you.
Same. I'm curious if this has been true for you. So I also feel I'm in my third Michelle iteration. Like there was social worker Michelle who started a pet care business and then learned all these like hard, painful, difficult lessons. And then now has the opportunity to be in this third iteration of helping companies. I feel like the second iteration of myself in my pet care business at the time was very focused on financial management of like the business and myself. And like that was kind of where I was looking at maximizing ROI. That's the terms in which I thought about ROI. The third version of myself in DogCo is just obsessed with like time return investment and time as the resource that I want to multiply. The further I get into business, the more I realize how truly limited it is.
And I've noticed you making these changes too, just in your DogCo business. And correct me if I'm wrong, but at one point you were doing, kind of one-on-one coaching, and then you realize there's only so much of me to go around. And that's why I'm excited that you found a platform to
Mm-hmm.
to help as many people as you possibly could,
Mm-hmm.
because the world needs people like you. Working one-on-one with folks is hard. It's hard to have a
Mm-hmm.
maximum impact. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why, I was excited when you asked me to become a part of the dog code team, because really I was focusing all my time and energy on that one-on-one. And there's only so much that I can do in that platform.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm working with you, I think we can help a lot more people. But that return on time, and time is different for everybody. It's like, what do you want to do
Mm-hmm.
with your time? For you, Michelle, like, what was it? You said that you were focusing on financial management, but now, like, what do you want to do with that time that you get back? Like, what's your story?
Yeah. Ooh, I like it. It's a good question. I've gotten really connected to this idea that was really like the resonant theme of my talk at the summit of I really believe we're at this pivotal crossroads in our industry of just more resources, more attention, more money, more growth than many industries see over a much longer time horizon. The pandemic just expedited the trajectory, I think, of our industry at this really, really fast level. That is both so incredibly exciting. I scaled my business through the pandemic. I think some of the ways in which our industry are changing is really powerful. Like, I think we are kind of coming into this season with really unmatched potential than we've ever had, like unparalleled potential. I also see companies almost like getting crushed under the weight of all of the change, all of the transition, all of the new things fighting and competing for their attention, all of the interest from vendors and software. And there's just so much. And I think I feel this real, and I promise this getting back to the question of time, I feel this real weight of the impact that not just me, that's one of my most exciting like things or things I'm most excited about for 2026 is getting to work with you and Doug and Corinne and Colin and all of the success leaders, because I really feel like we're in a rising tide raises all ships kind of moment. I think we're better when we're together. And I think that there's so much potential. I keep using that word for our industry. And so I felt coming into planning for next year, I was at this real crossroads of, I love working one-on-one with companies. And I do have a few kind of protected areas in my work with DogCo to keep that because I do enjoy it so much. But almost this moment where it was like, if we're really going to do that, like raise the tide of all these companies collectively together, one, I need more people. Like I'm going to have to tag in the other big dogs. I can't do it alone. And two, we're going to have to do it in a way that is more time efficient quote unquote for me, but in ways that I genuinely feel like serve the industry better. So my husband said something to me, you got to meet Evan at the summit, said something to me where he was like, I feel like a lot of the changes you're making in DogCo right now are so similar from when you went from being a solopreneur to being a
Right.
team in your pet care business, and how afraid you were, and how like much change it was. And that has given me a lot of excitement because I feel that same precipice for DogCo of like, no, this is truly becoming something bigger now than just me. That's really big, but I think it's really important. And I love the idea that I can model for companies those big, scary changes that feel very vulnerable, that do require you to shift your relationship to the business, but for a bigger purpose.
I started my pet care business because I loved pets, right? And I needed the extra cash. And that's just really how most of us start. But I'm like you, that I see this much larger trajectory really for a lot of us, especially this industry. When we first started, we were all alone. We were by
Mhm.
ourselves. We had to learn everything we could through a Facebook group, and that's really not a very efficient way of learning. But now that we have the attention and the spotlight on this industry is just so exciting to me, and it provides a lot more opportunity for folks. And for me, I wanted the time, honestly, to spend more time with my own family. It's hard watching your parents get older, right? I hope it was okay to ask you that question because
I
I was
loved it. No, that was good.
genuinely interested. I think it's important that we all try to figure out what is important to us. For me, it was family. Other folks want to continue scaling their businesses. Some people just want to retire. Some people want to go on vacation. And that's really what I'm just all about. Just trying to help people find ways to reclaim that time. I think that's so important. Just the fact that we have so many experts in a single forum now,
Mhm.
that saves time, right? Because now all of the expertise is not segmented. It's not all over the place anymore.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. You and I have a lot of alignment here that I think is one of the bigger misconceptions people can have about me, is that I'm all scale. I'm all like LFG, which is, the unofficial DocCo tagline. Let's fluff and go.
Mhm.
And the thing is, I am, but it's for a much deeper mission of I very badly want companies to have autonomy and options. Like for me, I'm in a season where reclaiming my time, I want to do that so that I can reinvest it. Like I'm just in a season where I'm like, how hard can I grow? How hard can I push? That fits me. But I've had other seasons where it's like my husband told me like I need to quit my job. I'm not happy with the job that I'm doing. And it's like, okay, I need to reclaim time so that I can work on my business so that it can sustain us. I've had other seasons where something's happening in my family and I need to take time off. Growing your business to a sustainable level where the finances support you, even if you're not in the field, and the systems support it working without you, that's what really drives me, is that autonomy.
And that's a life return, right? You go from a money return to a time
Mm-hmm.
return to a life return. And when you're making less mistakes, when you have less stress in your life and better boundaries, suddenly you have a clearer path. That's why I get so excited about automations, because I know that it can just free up at that time so that then you can focus on whatever that life return is. You can
Mm-hmm.
focus on that instead of just existing.
I love this. I'm curious your thoughts. So let's say you're sitting down to talk to a company and they're like, Robert, I need time. I'm burnt out. I'm struggling. Where do you start with them? Like, how do you start detangling that web? Because I imagine that could be pretty open ended. That could be we talk for 100 hours and we're still detangling what's going on. Like, do you have a go-to place that you like to start with time return for people?
First, I want people to understand that often the bottlenecks in their business are themselves. And I think you have to start with that place of understanding that you're the one that's standing in the way of
Mm,
better things in your business. Once you overcome that hurdle and realize that you are the bottleneck in your business, then I think starting with understanding where your time is being spent. If I could automate every single thing in my business, I would. Not everything needs to be automated. If I'm going to spend hours developing a workflow that's just going to save me 15 minutes in an entire year, that's not
mm,
really worth it, right? And I think we all have, to some degree, the shiny object syndrome. And when I start working with a business, they just want everything automated. They don't really have a clear idea what they need to automate. I find, though, that for the most part, for most of the businesses that I work with, it boils down to that whole client onboarding
mhm,
process. And then there's the employee management side of things too. Those are really the two time sucks I find for most businesses. And I think if I ask people to just start tracking their time, that seems like such a boring thing to do, but it's critical. I walked around, I had an app on my phone where I was just every task I did, I would just hit the timer and keep track of where I was spending all my time. And I think folks just need to do that. They need to go through that exercise and understand where they're spending time that they shouldn't be spending. But just because it can be automated doesn't necessarily mean it should be.
I agree with that. We've hinted at this, but Robert's joining the DogCo team
Mm,
with a couple other partners for next year, which I'm just so above the moon about. And we have not yet, but we will sat down to talk through like, hey, here's what I'm covering the first month in the mastermind. Not that you have to sync up what you're doing with it, but just so you know, so everybody's clued in. Here's the journey our companies are on right now. And the first month of the mastermind, I have people do a 2-week time track. So I
mm.
really love the reinforcement of you telling them, please actually do this. Because it does seem so tedious. It seems so not rudimentary, but I think sometimes we're just so in the busy and so in the like sprint and the grind that it's so hard to stop and do this and to see the value of it until you have 2 weeks of data to look at where you're just like, oh my gosh, I see the themes. I see the holes. I see where my time is just escaping me. I see how inefficient some things are. And to your point, I think the data you capture there is the guide of what comes next.
What I have found is that often our feelings
Mm,
about our time are vastly different than what's actually happening.
mm,
And when I go through that exercise of tracking the time, I could see exactly where it was leaking away, right? So dismantling those bottlenecks are just so critical. Whether you want the time back to spend with your family or whether you want to just continue growing your business, finding out what's important to somebody too, right? You need to understand what's the end goal here.
mm,
Why are you trying to save the time? And I think until you have that clarity, it doesn't matter what we do, what automations we put in place. If it's not getting you closer to that goal, then I think it's just all
mhm.
for naught, honestly.
Yeah, I fully agree. Man, I'm taking a lot of things away from this. I can't wait to come back and listen. So maybe let's look a little bit ahead to next year. What is something that you're hopeful for DogCo clients specifically, since we have the privilege of working with you more closely? What are you hopeful for the DogCo clients you're interfacing with next year?
I really want DogCo members, these businesses to feel steady.
Hmm.
I think that's a great word, steady. You don't want your schedules just looking like whack-a-mole or Tetris. I really want people to have more intention around
Mm,
their schedule and make things feel more like a plan. So solid systems, right, for hiring and for training and just the day-to-day operations. I really want DogCo members to use AI and automations in really very practical ways,
mm,
just not, fancy extras that you're just bolting onto your business, but just normal tools that they would
mhm.
use week after week, right? And another thing too, I tell you, AI has really changed the narrative around SEO and web clicks. Do you know that out of every 10 Google searches, 6 of those now result in a no click? So if you think about that,
Really?
yes, 60% of the time, nobody's clicking on anything. And it's because AI is getting to really understand our behavior, and it's recommending the right solution at the right time. I see a lot of business owners getting really frustrated that their website traffic is going down. But the reality is that the traffic that they do get now is more intentional. And
Mhm.
so I'm really hoping that one, people can get back time, but I also want them to be the trusted source and the final recommendation for a lot of these AI platforms. We're starting to see it more now every week in the Next Level Pet Businesses group. People are sharing how they finally got a client that was recommended by ChatGPT. And that's just mind boggling to me, but that's the direction we're going. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that by the end of next year, when we're all sitting around a table and talking about how 2026 went, I'm hoping that we all can say that, we're AI's favorite whatever, pet sitter, dog walker. So, my goal is twofold: give you back the time, and then give you the knowledge to really keep up with the AI revolution that's going on around us. We have to embrace it, and I really want businesses to more fully embrace it too. You can't fight it. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to embrace it, and I want that for people. I want them to embrace it.
Well, and Robert, I want you to know you fill such a needed hole in DogCo because one thing I'm really committed to is I will never present myself to people as an end all be all solution. I'm not. There are certain things I'm really good at, and there are certain things that it is not my forte. And one of the things that I personally struggle with, I am not an early adopter when it comes to technology. I'm not. It makes me nervous. It makes me hesitant. So this is an area we need your guidance and we need your support because I'm in the throes of the crowd saying, I don't understand this and I want to be bought in. I don't want to be afraid of it. Afraid might be a strong word, but it's kind of in that vein. Like it's new, it's overwhelming. And so I'm just so thankful you're coming into DogCo because that pathway building for companies, for myself, it's just so fundamental to have somebody as part of our team who's still learning. There's no way you couldn't be. It's a new thing comes out every week, but is also saying, hey, I'm going to reach behind me and kind of help you guys come too. So thank you. Thank you for the work you do and for helping us do that too.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, my friend. Well, I think that is a good place for us to wrap up. If you are listening and you want to find more of Robert, well, one, if you're in DogCo, it's a good time to be in DogCo in 2026. I'll just say that. So maybe if you're thinking about enrolling, by the time this comes out, I'm not going to lie, we might be full. This comes out, I think, the Monday after Christmas, somewhere kind of in that ballpark. So if you are sitting on an enrollment form, let this conversation sway you. We would love to have you in the room next year if we're not full, and we might be. But Robert, outside of DogCo, where can people find more of you?
So my Facebook group would be a really great place to start. So it's Next Level Pet Businesses group on Facebook. We talk about AI, automations, and on top of that, we have some of the best minds in the industry in that group. These are
You do.
businesses that are making things happen. And I think that's why it's such a special group of people.
Love it. I'll make sure I drop the link to that. And thank you again. This was really wonderful.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.